Hello, so today is another session of the social well-being and the importance of I. And so today I wanted to continue with the subject relating to the brain function and our optical system and the hippocampus. And so I will be also speaking also in regards to how this affects in autism. I thank you for joining me today. My name is Judith Mendoza, and I am a behavior consultant. I welcome you today. I am also an educator. And so today I am bringing autism awareness. And the way that I bring autism awareness is in a different way than others do. And the reason for this is that I myself have gone through the experience of finding that someone that is very close to me had autism and we did not know. And by we, I mean I, and I mean his family also, and friends. And so I am volunteering my time. I take out time from my time and I volunteer it in bringing autism awareness, also education, and also mentoring. So today I will continue with the session, the importance of I. And the reason for this is, so someone says, read my name. And so that's at Big Toy Boy. All right, so let's start. My name is Judith Mendoza. I am a behavior consultant and educator. And of course, these subjects relate to social well-being because the way that we feel, it is going to be what we reflect out onto others. And so I also pay attention or want to bring the attention to having a good nutrition, having also good routines that we can follow so that we can benefit from it and we can care for ourselves. So the point of these sessions is to bring to our attention our conscious mind in regards to self, in regards to I. And of course, it is not in the way that we want to just make it a matter that it is, or we don't want to make a thing in regards to being idolized by others. Of course, this is not what this is about. This is in relation to autism because of the way autism affects the individual. And so having a processing of information in a literal way only makes the understanding and discernment of information more difficult. But then also what has been found is that when it comes to the brain itself, the whole brain, for those who have autism, their brain, the way that the brain has developed is different than those who have no autism. So of course, we want to know the function of our body. We want to know how our body organs function, and where is what in our bodies. And when it comes to our brain, we want to know the composition of our brain. And this is important because as we understand the way that we function, we will understand also that we are part of humankind and that we have limitations, and just as any other conditions that exist out there, autism brings its own effects on the individual. So I wanted to mention in regards to the last time I was speaking in regards to how the individual with autism visualizes the information. And so we know that is in pictures. I have mentioned that. But also it is related in patterns, depending on what they're going to do. And sometimes this is seen and observed as odd behavior in the individual. And for example, I can bring an example of that. And I had mentioned that for those who have autism, they are unable to pretend. And also when it comes to perception, when it comes to dimensional aspects of the vision, how far, how big, how small, how deep, is important for us to know. But even without autism, when you get to know how our brain captures information, sometimes we can see something and not grasp that maybe there is something that we're not capturing, or we're not capturing something, the whole truth. And that is why when it comes to telemarketing, when it comes to selling products, we have an illusional context that can be used in order to manipulate our brains and what we see, or what they are leading us to see. And so depending, right, and we have these algorithms, and we have all these different ways of capturing information from ourselves through the internet, right? Through what we see, through what we navigate. And nowadays that everybody is on the internet, everybody is in competition with one another, we see that we're being just overtaken by all these algorithms trying to get either our attention or try to get knowledge to learn from us and from what they can offer the consumer, right? So we have a high volume of that happening now, and that is because of that. That is because they can capture from what we are seeing on our phones, on our tablets. And so when it comes to technology, it has to do with our psychology also, and our tendencies, right? So when it comes to the person who has autism, And I explained that for the reason that to explain in the way that this information can be used, right? But when it comes to the information that we take in, I have mentioned that it can be that we're not seeing the whole thing. We're seeing some type of visual illusion that is given to us it could be depending on what we want to see, right? For those who do not have autism and who have the perceptions, and sometimes we see more than is there, sometimes we see less than is there, and that will depend on how we feel. That will depend on also what we want, our desires, our worries, right? And so when it comes to the visual system, it is mentioned in regards to and I want to mention the reference, right? So if you want to look it up, so this is the National Center for Biotechnology Information, the U.S. National Library of Medicine, and we have this doctor that is explaining. And so in regards to the neuroanatomy, and that relates to our neurons and how our neurons can replicate the information, how we can visualize information. And so we have here that 3 names: Trevor Hoff, Navid Mahabadi, and Prasanna Tati. And this is a study in regards to neuroanatomy. And so we want to know how our brain is composed, what is what, how it functions, and then also all of these have to do with our nutrition. We are made out of the things that we eat, 70% being that we are water. So humans, our composition is made from the things that we eat, things that we know about. Of course, if we lack these, if we have deficiencies for whatever reason, then we will start to have difficulties, problems, illnesses, conditions, and most likely, if you feel it in any part of your body, you will also have the same or this whatever illness you feel through your body, you will also feel it, or it will also affect your brain function in your brain process and your brain growth. Because just as how our cells in our skin, our bones, they continue to renew, our brain also goes through processes of renewal, of mending, right? So we're constantly going through maintenance. But if there is nothing for the body, or there's only a few things that the body can kind of use in order to continue this process, then we will continue to feel sick, either mentally or our body. We're one. Our mind and our physical body, we are one. We're not separated, right? Usually the insurance companies, they like to separate the mental behavioral health from the physical health. And in reality, it is not, right? So they do that for their administrative services and whatever they have to do, but that have nothing to do with the composition of our body. If we're affected mentally, we're affected physically. If we're affected physically, we are being affected mentally, even though we may think that we're not. So then, in regards to this, it mentions that the visual cortex is the primary cortical region of the brain that receives, integrates, and processes visual information relayed from the retinas, right? Or retinas. So it is in the occipital lobe, and if you look in the brain, if you look for that part, the occipital lobe of the primary cerebral cortex, which is in the most posterior region of the brain, the visual cortex divides into 5 different areas. So based on function and structure, visual information from the retinas that are traveling to the visual cortex first passes through the thalamus, where is synapses in a nucleus called the lateral geniculate. This information then leaves the lateral geniculate and travels to V1, one of the 5 different areas. And so they have cataloged it as V1 to V5. And so the first area of the visual cortex is the lateral geniculate and travels to V1, the first area of the visual cortex. V1 is also known as the primary visual cortex and centers around the calcarine sulcus. And then, so we know this is how the information is gathered, right? It's gathered and it's taken to the brain. Now, something to note, right? It says that visual information from the retinas, I read that part. Okay, so this information leaves the lateral geniculate and travels to V1, the first area of the visual cortex. V1 is also known as the primary visual cortex and centers around the calcarine sulcus. I read that. So continuing, each hemisphere has its own visual cortex, which receives information from the contralateral eye. In other words, the right cortical areas process information from the left eye, and the left processes information from the right eye. The primary purpose of the visual cortex is to receive, segment, and integrate visual information. The processed information from the visual cortex is subsequently sent to other regions of the brain to be analyzed and utilized. This process is highly specialized and allows the brain to recognize objects and patterns quickly without a significant conscious effort. So the brain, right, as the child, remember the child is inside the belly for the period of months that the child has been inside the belly, right? Once the child comes outside, they start visualizing, and usually we learn. If you know children when they are very little babies, they come already with this facial recognition. They can recognize their mother's face, right? They bring the baby to the mom, and immediately they have that contact with the mom. They start recognizing the different things that are on the environment, are on their environment. And so they can start recognizing, analyzing, if there's need to be analyzed, and classifying, right? This is what happens in our brain. And so when we know something that is new to us, that is the same process that we do. So we capture whatever new image is there, our brain seeks to compare it to whatever we already know. And then if there's nothing that it finds that is similar, then the brains learn. We learn. Our brains learn what this thing is, how it works, what is its purpose. And depending on our interest, right, that will be also of concern for us to know about something. Depending on our interest, we will either make use of it, and we will remember it better because we have an interest attached to it. If we don't, then it will become something as an image that we saw, and that's it. So if we see it again, we might have a memory of it, recollect. We may not. So it will always be based on interest, right? And so again, that is why these marketers, those who want to sell their products, have found out that this is the way that humans function, and so they invest in doing this. And so then it mentions, I don't know if you knew this, but the left side of the body controls the right side of the body. That is how we're wired, and the right controls the left, right? So that is the way that we are wired. That is why it says over here that the right cortical areas process information from the left eye. So whatever you're capturing here is going to be processed here, and whatever you're capturing with this eye, then you're processing it on this side, right? So there is a cross side going on. Now when it comes to autism, they are only seeing a plain image, right? So they're seeing a plain image, and they are putting that image inside of their brain, or that they are receiving it in. When it comes to replicating, they replicate exactly the image that they have seen in a literal way. So then something must be going on, and then also there's no perception in the case of Frank, because that is what I have observed from him, right? I have mentioned in regards to him drawing the drawings that he drew, and drawing it. When I was drawing it, I drew from the distance that I see it. So the size of the mirror that we were drawing was from my point of view, from where I was, in maybe about 20 feet away. And so I drew what I was seeing, the size that I was seeing, because my lens could adjust. But the way that he was drawing it, it was like if the mirror was right there in front of him. Like, you know, something like if you see my hands, right, look smaller if I have them over here, but if I put them out over here, closer, right, closer to the camera, they seem huge. And so our eyes are supposed to adjust. And so when I lift up my eyes to look out, to the distance, right now I can see the object that is very close to me, right? But when I look up, immediately my eyes adjust in order for me to then be able to capture that something is at a distance from where I am, not close anymore. And so that is an automatic thing that should happen. So we were sitting together when we were doing this, Frank and I, we were drawing, right? He actually told me, let's draw, let's make a drawing. And so I think I already had drew him of a picture. And so he wanted to repeat the drawing process that I had done, because that was similar to what I had done. I had drew already. I had either drew him or drew one of our friends' face, and I was in the process of drawing Frank, or I think I had drawn him already, and then I was in the process of drawing a friend of ours. And so we were sitting together, and of course, to me, he was just inviting me to draw, because I like to draw. Not a lot, but he asked me to draw, so I said okay. And we were sitting at the same distance, so he should have seen the item the same way. And so I started to draw it in the distance that I capture the image, right? And drawing it how I see it. And then he was doing the same thing, but he was drawing it as if he had it like close up like that to his face. So that told me he has no perception of distance. Or also how, because the item, right, the mirror that we were drawing, it was on a wall, and underneath there was an arrangement, a flower arrangement, a table, and a flower arrangement over it. And so these, apparently he captured it very close to him, and he was drawing it like that. He was drawing like almost taking up the whole page, because we each had a page. And so he was drawing also, but you could see that the drawing couldn't fit in the page. So besides the distance, when he had it on the piece of paper, it was as he kind of couldn't measure the mirror to what the paper could fit in, right? And usually our brain uses computations in order for us to gather the information and then transfer it and then put it out in writing through our own physical system, right? And so then that's why I mentioned, when I have mentioned in regards to the eyes, in regards to capturing information, and in regards to how they learn, how those who have autism learn, they learn in a literal way. They are seeing pictures as if one has the Polaroid pictures or pictures that you take and then you go develop, and then you have each image of whatever event happened, and then you have all these images, or those who have autism have all these images collected in regards to this one matter. And then it could be that it can seem that the matters that these things that they are doing is in regards to different matters, but it could be about only one. And so they in relation to Frank, he um, before he was replicating all of the things that were in the environment in connection to this one thing that had to do with us and our relationship. It seemed, because he was doing these in different ways, in different times, under different names, with different people, but because it was so much, you couldn't tell that it had to do with this one thing. It appeared, and it still does appear, that he's just involved in his life and doing his life and just doing whatever he wants to do. But when you know, as I have observed, right? I have observed him. He repeats the same things over and over. It doesn't matter what name he has, what he's doing. You will see the same things repeated over and over and over again. And even though he changes, and I used to believe, okay, you know, he's trying to hide his identity for whatever reason, and of course it related to things that he wanted to associate to in order to make words. But of course that is not the way it should be, because that brings conflict and problems. Besides that, he is imitating personalities and identities of others that could be, and are, some of them, not good to imitate, not good for imitation. Some things we shouldn't imitate from others. But he wasn't discriminating anything. He was just repeating everything without discrimination. If it's bad, he will repeat it. He just repeated every scene as if it was a movie playing. Every conversation that we have had, every conversation I had with others, my friends, his family, he repeated everything. And so it had to do with, for him, he had attached all of these things to the relationship that we have. He's not doing that now because he's understanding now that these things don't apply, and shouldn't be related one to the other. And so when it comes to autism, it is good to understand the difference in processing information, right? So the literal manner in which they are receiving information, processing information, has to do with their optical system. So it's not a matter of making someone just look in the eyes. It's a matter of knowing how that person is being how that person is processing the information, because that is the way that their eyes function. And so I have mentioned that later on he went again, because of course this has to do with repetition. And when I look at the drawing, right, and I said to him nothing, I didn't say nothing to him, but I look at it, I look at the drawing, and he looked at mine, and he says, your drawing is already looking like it should look, right? And so he told me that, but then, you know, I know that drawing is an art, and it has to do with perception, it has to do with capturing information. So I didn't know that he had autism. We didn't know at that time. And so I just left it like that. But later on, as I have mentioned before, later on he went and he did the drawing. So he compared, he looked at the drawing and he see what he was doing and he see what I was doing, and apparently he couldn't measure why there was a difference, but he knew that the way that drawings should be the way that I was drawing it, but he didn't know why. So he went, and one day that I was visiting the family, I was visiting them, I went inside the room and there was this piece of paper and a drawing of a man sitting down on a stool, and he said, "Look, that's me. I drew that. I drew it. I drew myself," he said. And it was from a smaller point of view. It could fit it right in the middle of the paper, and it was horizontal, and so he made it that way. He made it appear that way. Of course, this did not becomes a matter of to be considered until later on, when I found out that he had autism. So when it comes to that, when it comes to teaching, it's not just a matter of someone looking in the eyes. It's a matter of how the brain functions for the one who has autism, how their optical system functions, and how they are replicating the information. And so when it comes to, I'm going to continue. So it mentions, right, the left eye receives the information, but it goes to the right side, and then the right side receives the information and it goes to the left side, and it's a cross-sided thing, right? Is it happening like that for those who have autism? We don't know. And so it says that the processed information from the visual cortex is subsequently sent to other regions of the brain to be analyzed and utilized. So if something is already known inside the brain, this information will be either become of more interest, if you already have interest in whatever you're seeing, or you're going to just dismiss it as something that you already know but you were not interested in. And so you will classify it as that. And that will be how our memories are also classified. It will be depending on the interest that we are taking. And so that is why also when you're seeing people in conferences or in the classroom, right, it should be that our attention is called and our interest gets to be aroused so that we can remember the information, because learning is based on remembering the information, and so that we can then analyze it, we think about its use, its benefit, or if it's harmful, to avoid it, and then if it's beneficial for us, then we make application to it, and if not, then we discard it, and our brain puts a warning sign sign to it. And so when it comes to those who have attention deficit disorders, right? Now, they go through something different, not because of their optical system, because they don't have the perception difficulty or whatever disconnect from the brain that will happen with those who have autism. But for them is their nervous system that is attached to the optical system, right? So in regards to the nervous system, we know that our nervous system stems from our brain. And so if we have deficiencies, our nervous system will not function properly. It will go off. It will go off out of control. And then we will be, because remember, our function is brain and body. So we will not be able to control ourselves, which means that our muscles may move without us having any control over it. And so depending on how much our deficiencies are and how long they have been, the effect of that will be worse, of course. And so there are simple things. I have mentioned the vitamins that we need, the B complex, which I have been testing those. I have been seeing, observing, and that is what we should do when we take the vitamins that we take. The B complex has a better function. I feel much better when if I just take the vitamin B12. And then I have found out also that taking just one pill a day every morning has a great effect in me. And so then the vitamin D3, vitamin E, vitamin C, which you could take also a lemon a day. And we have also the minerals at night, the magnesium at night, at least 300 milligrams per night before you go to sleep. Magnesium activates the vitamin D3 inside the body, and the vitamin C helps the vitamin E to be absorbed. All of these help with the main functions that we need to have in our body. And so when it comes to the dimensionals, right? Objects, when we see dimensions, we see 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional. A 2-dimensional or 2D object is an object that only has 2 dimensions, such as length and width. This has to do with our perception and no thickness or height. So we should able to grasp this information, to take it to our brain in a matter of seconds so it can be processed. And of course, because the more we learn, right, the more we gain experience, our brains keeps this information, or it should be that way. It should be that way when which is also a matter for those who have autism in regards to developing an identity, where you put everything, right? So whatever I am learning, for me, I put it in my brain, and I know this is information that Judith knows, right? So I am learning as I experience, as I learn new skills, learn new knowledge, learn new information. Then my brain is keeping all this information, and so if I need it, then I will know because I have used this, right? Or I have maybe not used it, but seen someone use it. And so my brain can remember if it has to do with objects, for example, that are two-dimensional, three-dimensional. Now, a three-dimensional object is an object with three dimensions that has a length, a width, and a height. Those who have autism may have difficulty with this, because remember, gaining the information in a way that you can also process it in other ways other than just literal flat ways, right? Then it will take that we have this ability to perceive and have perception about these dimensions. And so the same is with spatial visualization, which is the ability to mentally manipulate two-dimensional and three-dimensional figures, right? Also, when it comes to, this is something that I will also speak later on, right? But right now I am explaining about the brain and the function of it, and it is a big subject to talk about and explain. So with that, right, with the perception that we have in regards to all of these, the dimensions, right, to the dimensions that exist, it is what also will help us in the matter of when you find interest in a human, in another human. But if you're seeing just flat images as if they are pictures and with no perception, no dimension, then that will affect the way that you perceive other humans, so that your brain can also send the signals to the appropriate areas where you can feel aroused sexually towards another individual. But this is something that I will be explaining later on. And so that's why, but I wanted to mention that because for some it might be that they feel that they never feel aroused and might believe, okay, so I am asexual. But there is a reason why. It doesn't mean that you will not be. Like, for example, if you get married, that you will not feel interest in that way for another human being. When it comes to relationships, there are certain factors that contribute to that. And if those factors don't exist, you might not feel inclined towards that individual in a sexual way. But again, I mentioned that there are different factors that can make this happen if the person is not receiving this information in a optical way. And so then another thing that I wanted to mention was in regards to the hormones, especially those that affect the brain, for the growth of the brain. And we know that this is something that happens from inside the womb as the brain puts itself together, right? If the mom is deficient, then of course there will be deficiencies We know that B complex, the amino acids, the omega-3s, which I forgot to mention, but omega-3, the vitamin E, the vitamin D3, magnesium at night, and vitamin C, all of these are essential. And also a little bit of zinc, just a tiny bit, every day, or maybe every other day, especially if the person is planning to get pregnant, because we know that the brain formation, it forms inside the womb, but it continues to grow and form even after the baby is born. This is a process, a continuous process. And then once it reaches maturity, that the brain matures in the way of growth, right? So it's fully formed with the neurons capacity that it should have, and all of the capacities that it should have. Then as we grow older, then there is the maintenance of it, which is something that the way that we participate in this, in our own self-care for our own brain, is in what we're eating. And the hormones are going to be produced and reproduced in order for our brain to function. Our thyroid can be damaged because of the lack of these essential vitamins, especially the ones that I mentioned, which are the B complex, the D3, the E, the omega-3, the C, the E, and the magnesium at night. If you take those vitamins, you will start to see a difference in how you're feeling, in overall. Of course, as I mentioned, if there are damaged organs already and they are going far, the body seeks to repair. But in certain occasions, there's nothing that we can do but just to do what we can do in order for our body not to become even damaged further. And so I wanted to mention also in regards to, and I will continue to do this for next week, because there are different topics that I want to speak about, but I want to also emphasize in regards to our self-care, our brain, our nutrition, our daily activities that we should be doing. And then the hippocampus. If you look up in the pictures that show how the brain is composed, you will see the hippocampus in the area in between, somewhat in between the brain there, almost in the back. And so the hippocampus play a critical role in the formation, organization, and storage of new memories, as well as connecting certain sensations and emotions to these memories, right? But if the person who has autism is having difficulty in regards to their optical system bringing in the information to the certain parts of the brain, right? And they do have to do everything manually, meaning the formation, organization, and storage of new memories, that they have to continuously be making themselves conscious in regards to learning the information so that it can be recalled, right? And so what I have noted is that, for example, I was going to mention that in the way that I have seen and observed that Frank has put information together, as I mentioned. For example, I didn't know why he used to do that before, but for example, the word play, right? If we were going to say, well, he liked to play basketball, and there are other sports that he used to play, and when we were together and we were with our friends. And so but let's say, for example, when he used to play basketball, he will dress in a way, sometimes he used to do that, and he will dress in a way that it was like if he had put together the word play with being a child. So he will dress as if he was a child. And you could kind of not notice that because, as I said, these were some odd behaviors that somehow one day he just come up with these. But if someone says something about it, he will not do it again. So then it was as he was learning information, but the information that he was learning was based on what whomever is saying about it. And so it could have just been a comment, someone's comment in regards to, like, why are you wearing your socks all the way up to your up, like a child do, right? And so, but then he will like later on realize, wait a minute, there's something wrong with these, I'm not gonna do it, I will not do it. And that's what he will do with many things. And so he will be like changing things, and you didn't even know why it was, and it just came up to being odd behavior anyways. But he was just trying to be like perfect, like not make mistakes, and like he knew that he had much difficulty, but he didn't want us to know. Until, of course, it comes up that it becomes a big, huge thing where he is in, and he's unable to tell that what's going on. No one knows that he has autism, and so now he is working with all of these things. He's making sense of all of these things and making an identity for himself, which is the first thing that we should do in order for us to store the information that we're learning. So this is what I have for today. Next week on Sunday, I will have another subject relating to our social well-being and the importance of I, and of course this is related to autism. And so I thank you for joining me today. My name is Judith Mendoza. I am a behavior consultant and educator, and I am bringing autism awareness through education and mentoring. I hope you like the information. I will continue with this later on, I mentioned on Sunday, and I will be talking about another topic in relation to the importance of I in autism. Okay, so I hope you have a beautiful day today. Enjoy the rest of your week. Goodbye.